finally, we're going to talk about the properties of pure substances in comparison to mixtures. So a mixture can easily be broken down into its separate components by means of a physical change. What kinds of physical changes are we talking about? So remember, we talked about them earlier. So physical changes are things like separating two pieces, crushing something, tearing a piece of paper apart. Some other things would be something like, let's say I have a mixture of salt and pepper. How could I separate those? One way might be to take some tweezers and pick out each little particle of pepper and put the salt in a separate pile, and you would have your salt and pepper separated. Another way might be to add water to it, and you'll see that the salt dissolves in the water, it blends into the water, and that the pepper will not blend in, it'll be separate, it'll float to the top. So we might do it by decanting, which means pouring out, or we might do filtration, which again, we're pouring it, but now we're going through a filter paper, and the pepper will stick to the paper. At that point, we're now still going to have the salt in water. How do I get rid of the water that's stuck with the salt or the water that's stuck with the pepper and the paper? So let's focus on the pepper first. How could I get rid of the water? It's stuck on the paper. I poured that water through the filter and the pepper got stuck to the paper. There's water still on the filter paper. All you have to do is give it a little time. The water will evaporate, scrape off the pepper, and all of those are physical steps. Everything I've talked about so far has been a physical process. If we look at the salt, it's stuck inside of the water. How do I separate it from the water? Just evaporate it away or boil away the water. That is one process we can do. What if I wanted to collect that water? On the other side, I could condense the water. Remember, we have heating and cooling, and we have condensation. The process of boiling the water and turning it into a gas and then collecting it on the other side is called distillation. So distillation is one way of separating a mixture of two liquids. Now let's look at how that compares to pure substances. And what about pure substances? Can they be separated by those types of means? Definitely not. So neither compounds nor elements can be separated by physical processes. Because they are the same, I can't separate them with the tweezers. They're going to have the same melting point, the boiling point, the condensation point. All of those things are going to be the same because they are the same compound. It's all just one compound. So they cannot be separated by physical changes. But compounds can be broken down into their elements through chemical changes. So for instance, we could take water and we could break it into H2 and O2. It isn't easy. We don't do it on top of our stove or anything like that, but we can break it from H2O into H2 and O2. We can turn other chemicals into other elements depending upon what we're starting with. So if I start with sodium chloride, I'm going to get sodium and chlorine when I decompose the sodium chloride into its component elements. What about the elements themselves? Can they be broken down? They cannot be broken down because they are already as small as they can be. They're going to be individual atoms of each type, and so we cannot break down those elements. Similarly, if we have a diatomic or molecular element, we see that it cannot be broken down into individual parts either. They will stay together as the molecule. You cannot break them down either physically or chemically.